that each person will have 1 minute, and we have Mary Quinn here, and she is keeping time and has a great little sign that gives you the 30 seconds in the wrap up. And the reason we're doing that is so that everyone who wants to ask a question has an opportunity today. And just remember, if you have something that comes up later, or you don't have an opportunity, or you do not feel comfortable getting up in front of the group, I wrote down for more information, you can email the board there and provide questions or comments there. So membership board, did you want to make a plug?
This is going to be real brief. Everyone, I'm Chip Studley. I'm the director, I guess you call it, of the Membership and Elections Committee. And I want to thank you guys for all being here, first of all, and I want to thank both groups for thanking the RPNA for putting this together. We are the RPNA. We represent everyone in the community 100%, whether you are Save, Don't Pave, or you are somebody who's pro or somebody who's neutral. So if anybody in here is not an RPNA member, this is only one thing that we do for the community. We also, as you heard earlier, do the 4th of July thing. Tamis is in the back there. She will take your membership today. I would encourage 100% participation. Obviously that never happens, but if anybody in here is not an RPNA member, I would encourage you to sign up today. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so I have some questions that came in first that I'd like to ask the panel. So I'm going to go ahead and start these, and then we'll go with the public comment or questions that we've received. So my first question that came in was, what changes would be made at the existing access points such as Glen Hall Park? For example, will there be a paved ramp over the levee at Glen Hall Park to allow ADA access to the new paved bike trail?
So at Glen Hall Park, yes, there will absolutely be ADA access through there. I actually want, is there any chance we could get the lights turned down again? Awesome. This is one of my shameless plug spots of, this is an area where we really need community input as well. We are absolutely going to have ADA access. We're required to have ADA access for putting a trail improvement like this in place. The question becomes then, how would we build that access? And that's the question I'd like to put out to the neighborhood. Glen Hall Park is obviously a very used park for your neighborhood. It's, I'm sure, a beloved park, and I want to make sure that what we do there is conducive with how you use it already. So we would be climbing up and over the levee. Just real quick for ADA code, you're required to maintain a slope less than 5%, which means every 100 feet you have to climb less than 5 feet. I'm getting head shakes. There are exceptions to that. If you have hand railings, you can have higher slopes. We're not going to have hand railings. We're going to maintain running slopes less than 5%. Generally, for a levee the height that we have, that means we need a ramp that's about 300 feet long in order to climb over. That doesn't mean we're going to have a single long ramp. It may switch back on itself. But again, this is where you guys can help provide input to us. We can provide you alternatives. You can give your thoughts. I'll stand here.
Yes. Okay. So then the next question we have is, where are the new access points and how will they be designed?
So the new access points, really there's one new access point that we're talking about, and that is Glen Hall Park. We're connecting to an existing trail at H Street, right on the other side, or at H Street Bridge, H Street, J Street, where the existing pavement ends. We're also connecting to the existing trail at Sutter's Landing Park that was just built and currently ends right about at the end, or right about at the Union Pacific Railroad. We'll be building a new access, as we said, climbing up and over the levee at Glen Hall Park. That will be ADA accessible. I think the root of this question may be that there were some early thoughts that we may have potential for additional access points. Those were at the pump station, I'm blanking on street names, but there's a city pump station right on the levee. There's also a stairway up and over the levee. Those options have been eliminated from this project. Those are not something that we're pursuing. Those are not something that we're interested in right now. The only way that we would look at that again is if there was a large amount of support from the community demanding those points.
Okay, so then the next question is, how have River Park residents been invited to be involved in the approval process? And what has been the schedule of public hearings?
So this is a fun, long, and complex question with how long this project has been out right now. Unfortunately, from my standpoint, I have not been around since the inception of this project. I've been on this project since about 2015, I believe. So there was early outreach to various communities around. As far as when the Lower American River Task Force was meeting and first formulating these ideas, they did some community outreach. I don't know the extent of that in River Park. I know there was outreach through the council member's office. I believe that goes back to Mr. Cohen's time. There was outreach done with the neighborhood. I was not present for that outreach effort at that point. There was the beginning of an outreach effort when we established our official project to start looking at this. And again, that kind of got squashed by the recession, so we didn't get as involved there as we wanted to. There was a survey that we released in 2016 as part of our grant effort. We did get a fair amount of community response both in River Park and surrounding areas. And I know the council member's office has also released information on this project in various newsletters and year-end summaries.
So will there be another meeting, and how would a community member in River Park provide input?
Yes, there will be another meeting, and that is not the only way that we're looking for input. Any input that people want to give, you are welcome to give. My contact info is online. You can search Two Rivers Trail Sacramento and it'll pop up. We have a quick URL, which is tworiversac.org, that you can pull up our project website on. I'm happy to take input that way. That said, we are going to have another community meeting timed with the start of the comment period for our environmental document. That is planned to be the end of July. We're pushing hard to meet that schedule. Unfortunately, I have a challenge with that schedule because I have a son that's due at the end of July, so we're going to see how that goes. But on top of that, like I said, everybody is welcome to reach out to us. Prior to that meeting, we are also going to be sending out a mailer to the entire community with info on the specifics of where and when that meeting will be held, just to ensure that everybody has a chance to come and make comments and hear what our findings are for that document.
So I also wanted to say that the RPNA has reached out to Jeff's office to discuss ways that the RPNA can help facilitate providing input on the project design and the project itself from River Park residents to his office. So not exactly sure how that's going to work yet, but we are working on that with Jeff.
So I just wanted to add a little bit too. At any time that RPNA asks me to come and speak to this subject, I'm happy to. You know, as I mentioned before, several people in this room have been former presidents of RPNA. And that is how we have typically, in River Park, interfaced with the council member on a real direct one-to-one basis. So I'll talk about this from now all the way through the end of the year, as much as you want that to have happen. I'll come and address any issues at RPNA. Additionally, this gathering makes me aware that we need to do more community forum about this subject. And I think Adam's exactly right. Once the environmental document is released, that informs us as to how to actually design the trail. I think some of you still think that the trail is designed and that it will be 16 feet wide. Adam addressed that a little bit in his presentation. it is open to discussion at this point as to what the actual final look of the trail would be and width, and the questions about what kind of vegetation would be removed will all be resolved in the mitigated neg deck and give us plenty to talk about.
Okay, so one of the next questions we have is how many trees will be removed? Do we have that information now?
We do not have that information now. I just want to reinforce that that is going to be part of that mitigated neg deck. I also want to reiterate a statement I made earlier that right now we are actively refining our concept to ensure that we're making as little impact as possible.
Okay, so one of the other questions was how many elderberry shrubs will be impacted and what is the cost of the mitigation for impacts to the environment? Removal of trees and impacts to the shrubs.
So I'm going to bring a slide up. Before I bring it up, I'm going to preface it of these are worst case numbers that we use at a very preliminary planning level to chase grants, just to make sure that we don't have a shortfall on a project later. And this is going to go a little bit sideways, but I think it's probably going to hit a question later as far as what the total project costs are. So we're basically looking at a little bit under $1 million to plan and design this project. We're looking at about $2.5 million for construction on the project, and the remainder, which is a little bit over $3 million, is planned for mitigation fees and planned for permitting. We don't anticipate our mitigation being that high. We, again, at a very early planning level, have to look at a worst case scenario to see what we're going to be looking at. Going back to the elderberry question specifically, elderberry is very expensive to mitigate. There are undoubtedly going to be some impacts there. There's no way I can hide from that. Again, we're refining that number right now. When we release the MND, then we'll have an actual number for you, and we'll be able to speak to these costs more precisely at that time as well.
Did the city quantify and assess the current uses of the path in its existing form, or assess whether the project will impact or displace current users such as pedestrians and dog walkers?
Jennifer can add to this if I don't cover it properly. Generally, for a project like this, a assessment of all current uses is not part of the studies that we would do. What we've really done with this project is do our best to make sure that we can maintain all of the legal uses of that trail that are happening right now. And that's something that we're trying to address through design concepts. That's something that we're making sure that we're addressing as we look at the general layout of this. It's just, we want to preserve all of those existing uses while still being able to provide the additional uses that people may desire.
You got it. Okay, so what are the opportunities for public input to influence the project design before the environmental review? And I think you already answered that with the neg deck process, and that you'd be having more meetings and you can provide input to him through email, which I'll get his information and write it up there for everyone. Is the city planning additional funds for ongoing maintenance, cleanup, policing, and enforcement needs related to the increased access and use, including increased maintenance needs at the access points like Glen Hall Park? And what are those sources of funding?
So I'd like to make a couple of comments about resources, particularly as regards safety and planting on the American River Parkway. Some of you may know that myself and Corey Brown started the Lower American River Parkway Conservancy Program, of which I'm now chair. We have this conservancy program which can be the recipient of state park bond money. So in June, you will be able to vote for, I believe it's Prop 68, used to be SB 5. If that passes, it's a Kevin De Leon Park and Water Bond issue. $10 million will be allocated towards the Lower American River Parkway. What that means for us is a bonanza of funds that we've never had previously to mitigate burn scars, to get out non-natives, to provide access, and to do acquisitions for the Lower American River Parkway. So right now we have $1 million in the fund. And it looks like, and I am pretty confident it will pass. If it does, then we'll have $11 million to plant and restore habitat on the Lower American River Parkway, which certainly includes the reach through River Park. So that's a pot of gold that we've never had before, and I'm very excited about that. Additionally, on the safety side, I've allocated resources from our Sutter's Landing revenues that we receive from the billboards, and we're going to relocate our park rangers to the courtyard at Sutter's Landing Park, which means that our entire park ranger crowd will be based right at Sutter's Landing Park, and that is a true bonanza for us. That's very significant because that means that patrolling specifically this stretch of the Two Rivers Trail is going to be very easy for the park rangers, and I've been speaking to them, and both the impact team and the park rangers have eyes on this stretch and will continue to do so.
And are you increasing the amount of people who are going to be?
Oh, no,
Wait.
sorry.
Just,
Oh,
just to add, over the last 2 years, I've just gotten 4 additional bodies. So total city park rangers, we have 13 now. I do have 2 vacancies right now, but we're working on filling those. So we've literally doubled our unit over the last couple of years. So we will have more bodies to cover all our city entities.
who has jurisdiction over the top of the levee, the paved trail, and the area beyond the paved trail? Do we call a ranger, Sac PD, or Sac County Sheriff? If the rangers, if the rangers are the case, what if they are off duty when there's a concern?
I'm going to start off with a very simple answer to this and then hand it back to the rangers. If there is a immediate issue, if there is a safety concern, it's really call 911. That will go to the proper people. From there, if there's a less immediate concern, then it's probably going to the rangers. If it's something after hours and of immediate concern, though, call emergency services.
So with if the bike path is added in, that'll actually fall under mostly the city park rangers. Now, the American River Parkway still falls under the county rangers, and then of course, we're in the city limits, so you've got the police department. So you've got 3 entities that would, at any given time, can be out in that area. As far as basically what Adam said, as far as how to call in, that's perfect. Unfortunately, the county rangers, both on the city and the county side, we don't run 24 hours. The police department does. Now, as far as for the city rangers, if you just call non-emergency police department, we're on their system, so we're going to see the call as well, and or get dispatched as well as depending on availability. County rangers, usually if for some reason our entities are not available, we can always get a hold of them fairly easy.
Okay, I've got 2 more quick questions and then we'll get to everybody else. What guarantees can be given that the areas adjacent to the bike path will give more support by law enforcement to deter and increases in crime and homeless encampments or late night parties on the beach?
I don't really have a guarantee that I can give. I can let law enforcement speak to it, but I think it's largely the same that's been discussed already. We have, in the last few years, we've been increasing manpower, we've been increasing the services that we provide, so there is added enforcement already.
Shameless RPNA plug here. The Neighborhood Watch Patrol, especially under Shelley Hescock and Justin Wisely, have done a great job. I don't know if any of you have noticed, probably not, since you're not over on the Parkway at midnight, but the number of parties over there has been, at least from my experience, significantly reduced by the efforts of the Neighborhood Watch. We dial in, we watch. There easily identified when they're coming down Carlson. They tend to come at the same time, between 10 and midnight. They drive too fast, they play loud music, and then they park in places they're not supposed to park. So we've done a great job of mitigating that as much as we can with the help of the police and the park rangers. So support the RPA.
Additional access points will allow for more parties to get around the neighborhood watch. Will the summer street parking restrictions be extended to the new access points? So there are no new access points. So okay, great. So now I'm going to go ahead and start calling up people who signed up to ask a question. Now, if your question has been asked and answered already by what we've discussed, that's fine. Just let me know that you're done. You don't need to ask a question. But we're going to go ahead and start.